So I'm streaming now. So let's adjust the sound first, so that my voice and your voice are at the same levels. Because in the previous streams we had slightly mixed volumes, mine being louder than yours. So could anyone go on the stream on Twitch and see if when I talk and when you talk, the volumes are the same? That would be appreciated. So could you just say something for testing so that we can compare, and I'll lower my volume if needed.
Sure. Testing or something?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Yeah, both voices seem to be coming through and seem to be loud and clear. So
In the same volume. Okay. Very good. Streams. Okay, and great. I guess we can start. Okay. So first, could you tell us a little bit about this project?
Sure. So, Planetbase is a third-party game developed, published on Steam and a couple other platforms. It has kind of been abandoned by the dev. He's basically said he's not going to push any more updates. So the last few years, I've written a couple of tools to extend that and make it possible for people to write mods for the game. And essentially, that's what this game does. What this project does. It takes the game and it injects some code while the game is running and loads mod files that other people write.
Okay, that sounds really cool. So by default, the game does not support modding, right?
Right, that is correct.
Okay. So it's really interesting thing that you did, and it's also a bit foreign concept to me, how to make a game moddable. So it's a nice thing to review. I've heard about it, but never seen anyone do it. So it's a nice thing. Only when it's already done for you by the companies, I guess. But maybe I'm just having misconceptions. Is it normal that people make games moddable? I don't know how it works, because I know, let's say, Fallout has mods, but was the game moddable in the first place? Or
Right. So a lot of most modern games, I would say, are designed from the ground up, where the engine is built and the engine loads assets and loads what is essentially mods. In fact, a lot of the games, take RimWorld for example, or Factorio. Both of those are actually written the engine first, and the actual core content is loaded as a mod. So yes, in most cases, at least that I've seen, especially on larger games, the entire game is written for mods, to support mods.
all right. So it sounds really cool, even more now that you told about this thing that you did, about making this third-party game moddable. So let's get on with the actual review. First off, the structure is quite okay for now. What I do have to nitpick on a bit is that usually, your project will be placed in the same folder. Well, it will be called based on the project name, but when you look at the code itself, it's under this. But maybe it's not bad because it's a Unity project. Well, my point is that normally I put it under source, but this is not just source, so it probably makes sense. So never mind that. Yeah. So I like the structure overall. I think this is a proper structure. When I'm developing, I usually have the same structure, except this is source, and I also add a folder for tests. But since it's a Unity project, it definitely makes sense to have this structure because you have more things like assets, patches, properties, and so on. License. I wonder, why did you put license inside that project and not within the root of repository?
Yeah, that one it definitely should be in the root of the repository. If I remember correctly, when I actually made this, I have a plugin for Visual Studio that adds licenses. So
Ah,
that and stuck it under the actual project rather than the solution folder.
all right, makes sense. Okay. Um, okay, patches. Oh, so it's quite. Is this all the code? Oh, okay. No, is
So,
this? Yeah, go on.
for a little bit of background, what the project you have pulled up right now is an example of something that implements my framework rather than the framework itself.
Mm.
So if you wanted to look and see how to write a mod, for example, this is a good example of that.
Oh, okay, I see. And is this the thing that you wanted to review, or is it the wrong thing that I pulled, and I should have pulled the framework itself? So it's, you gave me two links. Okay, I see.
Right, so I should have clarified that when I sent that over.
Yeah, it's okay. Okay, so let's look how it's implemented then. That is fine. Let's start with the structure, assets, strings. I guess you can configure a menu.
So the game, one of the few customizations the game actually does natively support is localization, and that structure there basically auto loads a game supported string file for localization in game. So the actual name of that file, the en, and then the underscore, and the folder location, as well as actual XML format there, that is all base game stuff.
Okay. And so menu deliver will be multi-language, and if you want it in different language, you put the language as a prefix, right? Before this.
So for example, if you wanted Russian, you put like RU underscore with another file,
Mm-hmm.
And then you change the actual text. Instead of send to deliver, you say that.
Okay. Okay. Great. Makes sense. Now let's see the patches. So, okay. So this basically illustrates how you can tweak game logic without, I guess, adding different models, but potentially you could add different assets to the game, right?
So the patches part, that's actually, in my opinion, one of the more interesting parts of it. It's something I added, I think, one of my most recent, more recent updates. So when the game's loaded, it loads my framework, and the framework runs some code in the back and sets stuff up. And one of the things it does is it goes through and it looks for patch files like what you have pulled up here. It uses the annotations. It uses an external library called Harmony, which is used for modding on several different games. But it essentially looks for annotations on certain methods and certain classes, and it finds the corresponding type in the base game, or even Unity itself, and actually modifies the raw assembly language to call the methods and the patches at certain points in the base game's method execution. So for example here, this patches the set cinematic method on the camera manager, and when this mod is initially loaded, this actually modifies the memory, the DLL in memory, to call this prefix method whenever the set cinematic method is called. It has a lot of advantages over reflection, because reflection has a fairly high overhead. I think I've seen some performance metrics that show it at like 100 times the normal method call.
Mm-hmm.
This, after the initial injection, has absolutely zero increase in overhead.
Wow.
So it's a very powerful tool.
Yeah, is this for explicitly for Unity, or is it just generic way of, I guess, adding extra behavior, injecting something?
So this Harmony library, it was built intended to use Unity, but it's not specific to Unity.
Okay, so it would work basically for any .NET based application.
Right. Yes.
Okay, nice. And what is bool for? Like, if it worked, if it triggered?
So that method signature there is defined by the Harmony library, and essentially that means if I return true, it should run the normal method. So if you look at the execution, something in the base game calls set cinematic. First thing that runs is this prefix. If the prefix returns true, then after the prefix runs, the actual method runs. If it returns false, then the actual method is not ran.
All right. And how does this know? Is this for a main camera, or how does this know which camera should you interact with?
So the base game only has one camera. So there is only one to choose from.
Okay, I see. But if you had multiple, it would add it to all?
If you had multiple if you had multiple set cinematics.
All right.
This targets a specific method, and then anytime that method is called on any instance whatsoever, it goes through that whole execution process of the prefix, actual method, postfix, and optionally some other stuff.
Oh, okay, I see. Is deletable. Let's look at another one. Colony ship is deletable.
So might help to give you a little bit of context on what this example is actually doing.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody on Reddit asked me to create a mod, or asked somebody to create a mod that makes it so you can have basically a ship land and deploy resources at the click of a button. Base game does that already as part of its introduction sequence. So when you start a new game, it'll show a ship landing, and it'll show colonists coming out, and it'll show resources deploying, stuff like that. So what this mod does is it adds a button in game to allow that to happen at any point in time. This specific piece of code basically looks to see, once the ship lands, whether or not it should be able to be, or as the ship is landing, whether or not it should be able to be deleted and recycled. So, for example, say that ship is landing, you don't want to be able to click on that and delete it while it's going down to the surface. You want to wait till it's actually completely stopped, and that's what this implements. And it also disables the button to send more ships until the first one's actually landed and deleted.
Okay, makes sense. Quick question about the naming patterns for result. Why? Yes, go on.
I figured you'd ask about that. The reason for the underscore, that Harmony library has some relatively strict requirements on the name of the parameters. That's what maps actual input and output parameters that would be sent to the method or from the method to the patch.
Okay. Weird, but I won't question it. And this is the chunk that we're most interested in, I think. Okay. So the immediate remark on this, and probably Joshua would agree, is that when you look at postfix, at you know, those things that you did here, it's fine in here. Like, I can just look at this and immediately tell what it does. Maybe not, because I still had to ask you, but the comment helps. Here, also not like immediately obvious for someone who comes from the outside, but in here it's not obvious at all. And what I would suggest is to just, you know, take this whole block and don't have that, okay, and just put it as private static. Just name what this does in postfix. Something, I don't know what it does, and it does this. Oh, it takes this. So then do this, because you cannot possibly make it clear from this call what it does. And for event handlers, you want to clarify it with step methods. So instead of something, what would be a good name for it? Let's look at it. So it loads a button icon. It creates a button out of that icon. And so a button to enable the ship to activate delivery ship.
Yep.
And at the right position.
Yeah, I mean, the method could just be called like load menu or something.
Load active delivery ship menu. Does that make sense, or a button?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so it will be something like this. So now I look at this mod and like at the top, I immediately see what this does. Like, what does this do? It loads delivery ship button. And therefore, if I want to know, if I want to care into details what this does, I will look at it. And this right here is a perfect example of when you should split stuff again. So here what you do essentially, this function does two things to me. It creates a menu. It creates a button, and then it adds it to the menu. So you don't want function to do two things. You want function to do only one thing. So this part for creating a button does not belong. It should be a step. So you want to put it in a function. So create a delivery ship button. And you put it here. Ship button. And the icon also goes to that one. Ship button. Do we need instance? We do not. So it goes in this as well. And now you don't need the comment as well. So you create this, and where does this come from? You need to return this, right? So you return the pause menu item. Oops. Okay. So we create delivery ship button, and that's it. I like that you did this instead of repeating instance menu and 3 times. If you had to repeat this twice, I would still do it like this probably, but there is that rule of 3. When you repeat 3 or more times, then you really need to reuse something. So that's good. Okay. So yeah, now we have basically 3 levels. At highest level, I know immediately what this does. It loads active delivery ship button, and that's the essence of it. And then if I want to know how it does it, I see, okay, so we create a button and we add it to the rest of the menu by replacing this button with this button, essentially, and adding one more. Oh, actually, this looks very interesting. Why is it removed and then added again?
So that is primarily due to the way the base game handles GUIs. So everything in the GUI in the base game is about as hard coded as you get. So I wanted to put this button somewhere around the middle of the menu. So to do that, I actually had to pop the previous items off of it and then push the new button and then push the old buttons on top.
So the order matters here. If I, let's say, okay, I see. Also, it from first sight, it looks like you just, it seems that it's nested and you just put it at the root level of the menu. Is that also the case?
Let me see here.
Because you have M items and you don't add this to M items, you add this to the menu. But maybe that's how menu works, that it actually adds to M items. But then again, why do you call M items remove and not menu remove?
Right, so here's where it gets even stranger. So add items, if you're to look at the source in the base game for that, add item, actually all it does is it calls add on M items.
Okay.
However, M items, there is no remove item on main menu.
Okay. I would, you know what I would have done? Because this is insane. Like, it's really inconsistent and it would drive me crazy, you know? I would make an extension method on main menu to just wrap this M items thing and call it from main menu with remove item rather than add item.
Yeah, either that or you could make it a stack, and that way then you could just pop it off and push it and add a new item to it. It might be a better structure to work with if the main menu was a stack.
It does look like a stack, so it does make sense.
And I've actually been working towards that. My next update, I've been working on this for several months now. I probably have a few months to go. I'm actually completely ripping out the entire GUI system from the base game and replacing it with a new UI system as well as some tools like that to make it a lot cleaner to add remove items.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Okay.
like I said, I don't have that currently in the game or in the framework.
Okay. Would so Joshmont, would you split this into a separate method? So then you would have basically, I don't know, something like load menu, and then this would be create a delivery ship button, and this would be a range menu, I guess, setup menu, something like this. Would you split, or is this enough?
I mean, I think yeah. See, it's quite difficult because all of this logic is just setting up the menu. So while you could split it, and you could have a method to create a menu and then another method to add to add the elements to the menu. I do think you know it I do think it's a little cleaner to have it as just the one, because it's all just creating,
Mm-hmm.
creating the menu, which you know which means is that you basically create your elements and then you just add them on to the stack, and so not stack but like a menu, a menu panel or whatever. So I do think is that this is one instance where I don't actually mind it all being part of the same method, because
Mm-hmm.
it still has that one responsibility
Yeah.
of creating and loading the menu.
Yeah. I totally agree. All right. So now to summarize this and also to note the structure of folders. I do like that you split it in folders regardless of just having one file. Some people would consider this unnecessary, but I think it's thinking ahead in time and just moving stuff based on their compositional responsibility, more like logical responsibility. So each is a component, like each is a plugin, a mod for a specific component. So that is clean in my opinion. That is good. So to summarize, this sets cinematic camera. This adds the ability to have the button to do deliveries for ship, and this just creates that deliveries button itself, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, to me, this looks really clean. It's well laid out. I would say is that the only thing which has been bugging me a little bit, and I haven't really figured a way to sort of go about changing it, or even if you can. But if you look at the set cinematic script, you were doing a check for like some sort of camera, right? As like, if this is cinematic, this to me sort of indicates is that it's kind of I mean, this sort of check I would deem unnecessary, right? It's something which I would try and do. I'll try and use some sort of like polymorphism and do it that way. I'm not sure if you could do that in this case though, can you, or do you have to do this type checking?
I actually did give that some thought when I initially wrote this method. Um, and fortunately, since that set cinematic handles every possible cinematic, um, the parameters actually pass into that method. If you were to look at the set cinematic method in the base game, uh, it's going to have a parameter called cinematic of type cinematic. And somewhere I do have to do that checking, because there are some other
Yeah, well,
animations that can be passed in here, and the only way to differentiate them is by type
yeah,
with the base game requirements.
fair enough. I mean, it does look a little bit odd, but as I say, I mean, if you're working, I mean, where this project differs a little is because you know it, it's it's basically written for a base game. So I mean, you sort of have to replicate it and sort of do it and sort of do things the ways that the the actual game has done it in order for it to be compatible. But to me, it looks a little odd. But then I suppose is that it's only happening the once. It's not as if you're checking multiple objects.
Yes.
But yeah,
Stuff like this, I think, is a symptom, like a code smell. But code smell doesn't mean code is bad. Like, just because you're coughing doesn't mean you're sick. It just means that you need to look at it carefully, extra attention. So we just had a look, talked about it, and we decided it's fine. Like, the alternatives would be worse and would probably over engineering. Okay, these days, if you're coughing, it's corona, and go quarantine yourself. um, yeah, and we have this one. What bothers me is this, but like I really hate the base word. I deem it as redundant. Is this yours or is this from Harmony?
Yeah, so the mod base is from my framework itself.
Why base? Why not just mod?
Because I guess base is a little bit redundant here. It's designed. I wrote it that way because it's the base class required for any mod. If you have any mod, you have to have that.
I would just call it mod, honestly.
Okay.
And it's more cool to just have mod in the name, easier as well. I would also document this. I'm not sure if it's documented. We'll see. I would write, especially the base ones, as much as I can about it. Since it comes from mod base, mod name also sounds redundant. Mod, well, it's for a mod, so by default a name in a mod is for a mod. If it's not for a mod, then you'll suffix it with something, prefix it with something, but it's for a mod, so I think mod is again redundant. So I'll write those comments.
I thought about that a little bit. I was a little bit concerned that somebody actually implementing this class might use name for something else. Granted, it should be named appropriate. It's probably more appropriate to have a stream called name as the name of the mod in every case. I was just a little bit concerned with being less specific there that somebody might cause some compatibility issues with somebody else writing implementation of that class.
Right. Well, it needs to be inherited, so it would give you a warning at the very least if you use the same thing. And right. Besides, it's abstract, so it has to be like you cannot shadow abstract stuff with a new property in the child, can you? I don't think you can. Yeah, so yeah. I also like that you chose abstract. I think that's spot on because you literally just want to get a property. It's not a constant. So it really makes sense to have a get only abstract property. So that's good. Assembly version, constant. I think this is a bit of a mix between all those things. So I would put this at the top. I also am not sure if you really need this. Have you considered, I don't know, reading this from your DLL instead of hard coding it?
So that is a good question. So something I haven't mentioned to you. I have another mod that's actually kind of a mod loader for other mods. It's based off of the framework. So I wrote a mod that basically takes XML. It will at some point support JSON. It essentially takes an XML configuration file and dynamically create an assembly based off of that at runtime, injects it into memory, and does all sorts of stuff. And if I was to attempt to read the assembly version from the DLL, it would get a little bit janky there. So I'd say there are some use cases where it is useful to provide in code the mod version rather than statically reading it from the compiled DLL.
Okay. There is one thing which is actually that I learned this week after looking at SonarQube warnings in project.work. So constant is actually, if you write this, static analysis tools like SonarQube will say, please change this into static read-only, which is not something that makes sense to me, Pop. Honestly, static read-only, get-only property. Yes, or like this.
Static read only. Do you happen to know off the top of your head what the minimum .NET framework requirement is for that? So I am unfortunately stuck on .NET 2 due to the base game.
I am pretty sure that it's fine. This will work because read only is something that existed for a very long time. We can have a quick look at it. Read only C#. Let's see. Damn it. I'm pretty sure it's been for a really long time. I can crap. So this doesn't get underlined, right? And this is .NET 2, so it works. It would get underlined otherwise. Wait, it's... Oh, okay. Okay, it's not there. 7.3, are you serious?
Yeah, I think it's a static part of that specifically. So I remember
Okay.
something about that a few months ago.
Okay. Wow. Okay, then constant is fine. Well, the thing about constant, why is it not so great, is like the convention for constant is for something that wouldn't change ever. Not just at the time that you will ever have one value for assembly version and you will know it at the time, but it should be something that doesn't change ever. Like pi in maths is a good example of constant, but assembly version is a bad example of constant because it changes over time, potentially, highly. And what this means is that, for example, if this refers to another mod, sorry, if another project refers to this project, right? And if you change the constant, only the constant in this project, and build everything, I read that this will not pick up. So it's just something that might cause unexpected problems. After the review, I'll try to find the link where I read about this so that I'm not wacky talking about this.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I wouldn't use a const for this. I mean, I suppose it's fine to use constants, but really, I mean, what I would do is just put it as a get only property, um, and that way, then you can sort of change it. What and or rather, if it gets changed, obviously, it can be returned because essentially all you're doing with it when you call into it is just displaying the version. So I don't think it needs to be constant.
Yes.
I remember now why it needs to be constant. So this is actually referenced in the. One second, I've got this pulled up on in the assembly info. And the assembly info.
Oh, okay. It needs to be compile time constant. Okay.
Right.
Okay, makes sense. Never mind.
And that's specifically why mod version is not a constant, but that part is.
Right, right. Well, it cannot be a constant because it's a class, so it wouldn't be a constant anyways. Anyways, I said a bit bullshit. You don't want read only because it's get only, so like this works as well. I mean, that's what I meant. You would write this if there are no other, constraints on this. You would write just a get only. Static get only property is what you would write. What you should prefer instead of a constant if it can change at some point.
I agree, and that's kind of what I was getting at. Is that instead of just a constant, it would just be a public read-only property, or rather, a property which just uses the get method.
Yep, and some of the points about the structure, layout of properties and other things. So I would put constants at the top always. Then I would put static, public and private, public at the top, private a bit below, then properties, and then finally fields, then constructor, and finally methods. Public methods at the top, private methods below them, and it doesn't matter if private method is referenced by a public method, it should still be below, because you want to have high level code at the top and low level code like private methods at the bottom. So that's about this implementation of a mod. Okay, now let's delve into the framework itself. I wouldn't like to spend too much time on this in case it's very large. So let's dedicate 1 more hour for the remaining of review. And it's actually not as big as I expected. So maybe we can review everything. It's way less code than I expected. So maybe we can review everything. Okay. Let's close this. We don't need that. Okay. Okay. Now with this, I liked what you did, as I mentioned, that you split in folders, but I really disliked the initial look at it, where everything is at the root. So it confuses me and a lot, because everything is mixed with projects, solutions, settings, licenses, everything. That I really dislike. So let's try to put it into proper places, okay? Right. I'll call it source and I'll put everything. So this whole thing is, I think everything qualifies as source except readme, solution.
See, the dot settings are not source either. They're for resharper configuration, team-based configuration.
Yes, true.
And the package.config.
That's true. License
app config.
Yeah. App config, I'm not sure. I think it's per project, isn't it? Not per solution. So you want to stick it next to project itself, right?
Fair enough.
Credits, I think, also doesn't belong to code. Right. So I would move this there, and actually it would be called per project name, so like this. And now this makes sense to me. And next to this, you would have tests, which would basically refer to this project. And you just don't want to mix tests semantically to source code itself, to the logic, because it should be easily, like, you should work with it without the context of tests. Like, it shouldn't be involved in any way when you're developing. I mean, you're writing tests, but for implementing stuff, it shouldn't get in the way in any case. And solution would contain both anyways. Okay. So let's just look at the names and try to figure out some parts that we could split this in. Base module type, framework mod base, mod list, mod loader. So there is at least 2 distinct parts for me at the moment. It's mod itself and loading of a mod. So mod and mod loader. So I would say this goes into mod. This goes into mod. Not sure. Probably loader.
So that one probably should go into mod. So the framework really does 2 things, and I definitely break up the structure to really show this. First one is the actual loading. That's the method that actually gets injected into the code at runtime.
This one you mean?
Right.
Okay.
And then there's a base framework mod that is an extension of the mod base class that essentially handles everything else. So loading of default assets, for example, like an error texture, adding a mod list to the main menu, things like that.
So which class? The one that you're talking about right now?
That one. Actually, that's a good question on that one. That should probably go in the mod folder. The one you're looking at should probably go in the mod folder. Oh, nope, never mind. That's sorry. It's been a while since I've looked at this part of the project.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is an appropriate place.
And this one?
That is also an appropriate place.
Okay, this and this one is still the last one that might be not clear.
That is the correct place.
Correct as well. Okay. Okay, then this would go to loader.
Mm-hmm.
This is very weird. And go on, because I have no idea.
So that is, let me see where all that's referenced. If I remember correctly, that is used for adapting. Let's see. Yeah, that should go in the loader. That's used for satisfying an XML serializer requirement to actually load those.
Okay, we'll get back to it. Okay. Tile button, I would say mod itself.
Yep.
And utils, I would just keep it as its own. Probably. I hate the name utils. I hate the name helpers. And I really still yet to figure a pattern for putting those. For now, let's just call it other and just keep it away from the root. So at the root, we have just what belongs to the project, and in the folders, we have the components. So now you see clearly what the framework is made of. It has a loader, mods, and some other scripts for utility. I guess you could call it utilities, helpers, whatever, but those are all bad names. So won't. So I think it makes sense to start from the mod itself and from the mod base as we looked at it first. Quite a bit code, but it doesn't really go too crazy. It's still in the limits of sanity, so that is fine. So we have some Unity stuff now with those game objects, texture 2D, the version. Right. Well, I don't really like virtual, but I guess it's fine to have a default version. So since I cannot propose a better alternative, I will stick to it. However, it probably makes sense to put something that you can override a bit above the things that you cannot, as it's the same requirement criteria as for abstract stuff. Now, private static would go above. Probably would put it here, but actually static. Why static?
Let's see. Just not specific to this instance of the class. So the zip instance is essentially a third-party utility that's used to extract zip files, but it's not specific to a given zip file, if that makes sense. So rather than instantiating a new facet for every single mod, it only has one for all mods.
Yeah, makes sense. Mm. Um, I'm considering, like, must it really, like, this to me feels a bit out of place, this thing, and I would wonder, like, why is this a class, why is this a non-static class altogether?
I didn't write that
Oh,
myself.
okay.
It's something I'm importing.
Um,
It's an open source library.
since every mod, so will you ever use this outside? Or only in mod base?
It shouldn't be used outside of any, even by the child classes. It shouldn't be used by.
Okay, I guess it makes sense then. I'm not sure where to place it. I would place it then above Harmony. Based on what I said initially, it would sit here, but I realized that maybe it doesn't look good. Public would be better suited at the top and private below public. So first publics, above constant, abstract, first constant, then static, then abstract, then virtual, then non-virtual, and below privates. Okay. Right? And this part I really hate. Extract and embedded assets. And now, where does the extraction end? This is a workaround. Lovely. Also, I'm not sure why you put it in line. Keep it above code, don't align it. So this is a workaround to get files to extract properly. Well, yes, workarounds do that to make code work properly. I would be more specific when you're making workarounds. Define properly.
Okay. If I remember correctly, and this is also an older piece of code, that is a piece of I believe it exception would be thrown by the third-party class if I didn't have that set. I'm trying to remember why.
Mm-hmm. And this really feels out of place right now.
Let's see. It has something to do with the encoding of how the files are read with the file with the oh right because of the way the compiler injects assets into the DLL, the encoding is different from how zip files are normally encoded, or something along those lines. Specifically because they're an embedded resource, though, that I have to change that.
Okay, well, that's what I would expect. Instead of extract properly is the same as no comment. Like,
okay.
Be specific for workarounds.
Yeah, and I suppose this is one thing as to which I don't understand, and maybe there is a good reason for this, but you know, this class is called mod base, right? Which every other class, a subclass would sort of override, which is fine. But then this sort of encoding logic shouldn't that be in its own class and like just sort of like inject that into a mod, because it seems to be doing too much.
So the purpose of this class is to set up required resources for any given mod, not every given mod, but any given mod that's loaded. And one of the things that it needs to do, a vast majority of mods are going to load in some kind of asset, be it a texture or an object file, something along those lines. And for them to work properly, either every single mod or very nearly every single mod will need to have the same lines of code, to set up essentially what this is doing is set up a extraction to pull in the assets and then decode them properly and then load them into the textures and the objects. So instead of having that implemented on every single implementation of this class, I have one-time
it's happening once in the base class and then happening again. It just works for any sort of subclasses. I suppose it makes sense then in that way. It just seems as that this class is doing, taking on too much of a responsibility. It seems, but I mean, again, I mean, this stuff is necessary, so maybe it makes sense to have it as part of the base.
It does make sense and all is good, but I would still place it a bit differently, and I'll soon show after I arrange the properties properly. So just I noticed that you have a bunch of fields below, so I just want to put it all in the right place. So next to static is fine. Private static, private. Okay, I think we're done. So hello. It might be a bit of an overkill, I'm not sure, but I was thinking, what if you basically, so the class is called FastZip, okay? What if you had, I don't know, some class that inherits FastZip, and you basically something FastZip. I'm not sure how would you call it, but basically the idea would be that in the CTOR, where it belongs, you would do this thing. So then in there you don't FastZip, but you something FastZip. And then inside your constructor, which is really off place, you wouldn't need to, do that workaround. It would be in a better place.
That makes
sense. And not public. I'm not sure if private is valid in Nest as a nested class. I don't really write nested classes, but I think it makes more sense now. Just extract it because it's off place to me.
Yeah, I like that way you wrote it with the private class instead of saying this what's required for this specific implementation.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
So I think overall it's fine then. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Never mind. All good. I was, thinking that this was like this and not get, and then that it creates every time. But get with equality means that you create it once. So it's like created in constructor, in static constructor in this case. Okay, all good. This is fine. Now, looking at this, so you wrote here extract embedded assets, but the extraction, I really have no clue where it happens. Is this the whole method that does the extraction?
No, so the actual extraction ends at the end of that for loop. That for each loop.
So this is the extraction.
Right.
So I would split this. Does it need any dependencies? Only the manifest. It doesn't need anything, so it's really, really, it's this code is actually such great material for refactoring that, oh my god.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm not sure why I didn't do that there. If you look in the try-catch statements below it, that's exactly what I've done with the assets after
Yeah.
they were extracted. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That should be pulled out and put into another method.
Yeah, and I put it as up as I can because it's the first step function. So private static void extract assets. So we have this here, it's void, it's perfectly fine, and we just replace it in here. And then what do we do? Load strings. Again, I don't know why didn't you? I guess it makes sense, but I really dislike try-catch blocks at the open.
You mean in the constructor?
Yes. I would I would still I would encapsulate this all together, I think. I would put this in a try-catch. This whole thing in a try-catch, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Everything should be extracted out into methods, and this try-catch should go within this load all strings method.
Yeah.
And the same for the other methods is that you call.
Yeah.
So the main reason why I put that try-catch there, and you look, I did basically the same thing for textures and for objects, is because the load all strings or load all objects, load all PNGs, are designed to be callable outside of the
Okay.
not too often that should happen, but I figured for code reuse, it'd be better to pass the exception upwards to have whatever's calling it handle the exception.
Why int as a return though?
Let's see. Sorry, why int? Oh, on load strings. Let me take a look. That returns the number. In that specific call to load strings is not useful, but that returns the number of actual strings loaded, because it is possible to load less than the total number of strings in the file. If that makes sense.
Okay, I guess. So what would happen if you would actually put this in a catch, try catch, as all together? Would
Sorry, what do you say? You broke up there just a little bit.
try catch for load strings is bad. Like if you call it from outside, you don't want to log that it failed, and you want it to fail.
Well, I may or may not. So if I call it from the outside, I might wish to determine that there was an error and then handle that differently than just logging it. For example, I might wish to attempt to load some assets, and if there's a problem loading those assets, don't load them, but load the rest of them. Or maybe detect and try to determine whether or not assets are valid by attempting to load them. Is loading, there's really wouldn't be a lot of difference between actually loading and validating. Well, really any difference.
Okay. I'd still put it as a method of its own. This method is fine, but I would still write a separate method.
Yes, same here. I mean, and the way I'd split it up is I'd probably have like a method to to load in the strings or load in the asset, and then a separate method then to apply some validation or some logging to that asset. So I mean, instead of and that way, then the load strings method would either just be void or return a string, and then if you want to validate that load strings asset, you could make that an int or whatever, and sort of do the checking there to see how many strings of that asset which you actually want to load. I do think it'd be better to separate it, but but I mean I could be wrong about that as well. I don't write a lot of like API type software, so but typically I try to just keep one. I just try to keep all methods just to a single responsibility.
Yeah. I guess it affects, like, what does it mean for a function to do more than one thing? Well, obviously, most functions will inevitably do several actions, right? But the key point for a function doing one thing is that you don't mix high-level calls with low-level implementations. So this is that you handle failure of loading strings in a catch block is already a detail for implementation. So it's a low-level call, and this is a high-level call, and you don't want to mix those two. So you want to separate each into 3 nice calls.
And also another thing as well, if you look at the try-catch block, the catch portion is just a general exception, whereas
True.
that should really be a specific exception or even a custom exception. If you want to write your own exception, and just call that. But I don't think it should be a general like catch-all exception. I think you should sort of catch specific exceptions.
That makes sense. I think I can probably write one for each one of these specific classes, and then set the inner exception to the underlying one that was thrown. Just information is needed.
Or I don't know, maybe it could be just a file failed to load assets file or resource file exception, and just add arguments for what was the target resource that you were trying to load. Like, here is a string, here is textures, and here is objects. So you don't need to be too specific about it if it's all similar, but you shouldn't ever throw or catch. Well, you can catch general exceptions, that's fine, but you need to really have a good reason for that. But for throwing, I would never throw exceptions. A bit off topic, but in my previous workplace, I saw people throwing application exceptions because they happened inside application, like in UI, which is not what it's for. It's actually bad. It's even worse than just throwing an exception, because that's not what it was meant for. It was meant for, I think, like some cross-domain exceptions or something like that, but it wasn't meant for something that happened in application. So yeah, so avoid throwing general exceptions. So yes, load strings. Also strings. Is it strings? Is it translations? Can it be more specific?
Yes. The only reason why I originally put strings in there rather than translations is this. While this is granted out, this is irrelevant to the user who be writing them on, but the underlying class of the base game calls it strings. And when I was writing that, that's just what I was thinking about. So that's why I ended up
consistency, right? Makes sense.
But
so
yeah, for the end user, that is what matters. It loads translations, not just strings or localization.
Yeah, load textures. So I guess it's justified, so let's leave it at it. It's basically you have to live with mistakes of others, which happens too often with load textures and actually load images. Well, PNGs, textures, well, that's the same thing, I guess. It could be abstract. I don't know why this comment though. Like, isn't this obvious that it's PNGs?
Yes. I think actually you might have added that when you were reviewing this. That comment specifically.
Oh, okay. Brain fart, sorry. And this is load objects. Why did I write it since I was writing? Okay, load objects. Could you specify what an object is in this case?
Technically not objects, OBJs,
Mm-hmm.
as in 3D OBJ files. That's the file extension OBJ.
Okay, so load. Okay.
So that does get a little bit confusing, since object in programming means something vastly different.
Game well, you cannot call it game object as well, because then it's Unity.
3D objects, maybe?
Yeah.
Meshes.
Load meshes is great, yes.
One of the things I'd like to do long term is add support to some other file formats in here, so that's probably a good start.
Great. Why is this not private static load meshes and objects, right? Mod base. Now, what I don't like still about this load all PNGs, get assets matching. Inject patches. Okay, so to me, this looks that it could be a class of its own.
Like resource loading or something along those lines?
Yeah. So you would refer to this class and it would handle those things for you. Because right now, up to this point, up to here, only here it starts being mod itself. Before this, it's just loading resources. It's boring stuff. The only thing I would care in the base one is something, you know, that has the logic for it, mod itself. And this is the logic. This is the essence of it. And now it's just mixed with, you know, with loading. And I want to see how the injection happens.
The actual injection, so I've gone through a few revisions of this. Initially, I wrote the injection stuff myself, but then I found a third-party library that's used by a number of games that does that in a much cleaner way than I was. So it's actually an instance where I wrote a single-use method, or not single-use, a single-purpose method, and then went back and changed it at some point.
Okay.
The injection part itself is done outside of this framework. Third-party library.
True. Well, it is being used here though. So like, you know, you have this thing again does two things. It does the injection plus the load of resources. And if we delegated basically those four methods somewhere else, it would then do two high-level things. Load resources, just call it, and do call injection. So, you know, it wouldn't be implementation of those four. It would be just calling those four or just one for loading everything.
So it might make sense to move those to another class, but for some background here, this doesn't actually inject the patches. What this does is it provides it does anything that's needed to do behind the scenes to inject the patches. Before there was a much larger amount of logic in there.
Mm-hmm.
So all that is doing is providing a method to any mod that's implementing this class or any child class to easily inject without doing a bunch of back-end logic. But the mod base by itself does not by default actually inject the patches.
Right. Right. So it's up to you then if you think it's worth it. I would split it still, because if you look at this patch, all this is not the same as resources in any case. This is a different thing. So I would like to have a segregation of loading resources in high level and injecting patches in high level.
Okay.
Since it's trivial to do, you can do it yourself if you feel like it. So just add a comment. So yes, I mean, now it's readable. You look at constructor and you see what's actually what it does. It extracts assets, loads strings, textures, and meshes.
Yeah, and the cool thing about that is that if you did want to add a try catch, you know, you could just add a try catch around the whole, you know, around the whole four methods, you know, and sort of just have a try catch in the constructor if you wanted to, so that rather than having a try catch for each method call, you could just wrap one try catch around the whole thing.
But he would like probably each failure to be separately registered.
Oh right, yeah.
Oh shit. Okay. Also noticed you never, like in your comments, you don't use XML docs. Is there a specific reason?
Let me see. In a hand, well, something I really do need to do is go back in through here and add documentation. I've been trying to do that on some of the newer stuff as I add it. Generally speaking, I try and use XML docs, only stuff that I would want to be actually generated in marked up HTML documentation. Anywhere else where I'm not using XML doc is more a reference to anybody who's going in here, not necessarily implementing it, but going and reading through the code and maintaining this.
Okay. Um, I think this is still some useful bit of information for
Right.
the one who implements it. So I'd expose it rather than having to dig for it.
Okay.
Yeah, and also another thing as well is now I would say normally I'm not a huge fan of comments, right? But this is an API, so things differ a little bit. But if you are going to add comments and documentation, I think it would be useful for you to do it on every method that's getting called or can be called externally. And you can also document the parameters as well, so that the person hooking into your API could also have context about what the method's doing, as well as what each parameter does.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that is on my to-do list. And like I said, on some of my newer stuff, you were to look at, for example, the mod loader. I basically rewrote that from scratch in one of the last few updates. That one does have documentation like you're talking about on every single method that could be called externally. I just haven't had time yet to go through and retroactively update where I didn't do it properly the first time. But yeah, I agree with you completely.
All right. I think so. Now let's look at the extract assets method. I think the others are quite self-explanatory. Uh, Extract assets method. Mm-hmm. Pre-processed. If it's pre-processed file, we skip it. Then we continue logging it. Sure. Resource stream, manifest resource stream. I guess I would move this to a constants file for file extensions, because you repeat yourself here. Zip. Potentially, I imagine you planned adding other extensions. Also, this is a bit of a problem that I see. What's the output of this switch? You basically extract a resource, right? And this is bound to change. Like if you add a new extraction file type, you will need to again just expand the class. So for every type that you want to work with, file type, file extension, you will add a new case, right? And this is a code smell to me. And what I'm suggesting that you could potentially do is to apply one of the two patterns I have in mind. So one pattern could be a decorator pattern where you just inject a different switch case handler. So your implementation would go into a decorator for zip and see if it's zip, if it can decorate. If it cannot decorate, it will move on, and like if it cannot extract, it would move on to the next decorate, or chain of responsibility, which would also essentially be the same. Like you have a bunch of file extensions and you just loop through them, and each has its own handler, so you just try handling it with each handler. Or maybe even better, have a dictionary and just have this whole thing as its own class. So you would extract this whole thing as its own class. Let's do it actually. Challenge accepted.
Yeah, and also one other pattern which could fit this purpose well would be doing some sort of like visitor design pattern as to where you have a double dispatch to each type of
it would not fit, I think. Visitor, let me think. Visitor works when you have different types, that's the key point. Yeah. Different types, but which don't have the same base. Then visitor works. But in this case, we have a string that we want to switch on. I don't think visitor will work.
Oh, right, yeah.
And decorator wouldn't work because it's adding extra behavior. We don't add extra behavior. Yeah. I think there's not even a pattern. And chain of responsibility is just doing something after, which maybe works, but it could be better. So to do okay, let's add implementation for this thing. All right, so we say public class resource extractor. Public, do we have the method itself? We do not. Public void extract. Right? So basically what I had in mind is that you have private read-only dictionary with key string. Right, resource extractor. Right, and let's have an interface. So you have an interface for resource extractor, which does one thing: public void extract resources, right? So you take this in. This is also resource extractor. And this holds child resource extractors, right? So basically, extractors, I guess you can initialize immediately. Sure. So your thing will basically expose add and remove, add extractor. Probably remove is not needed. I'm not sure if it ever needs to change dynamically, so I think add only makes sense. So a method which would maybe add is a bad word, register is a better word. So you pass it the string, file extension, and extractor. So you have your dictionary of extractors, and you add file extension and extract or. Yeah, and in your extract, so we'll have one more extractor. So public class zip extractor, I resource extractor, and we move it here. And what's the default? Well, we'll figure it out later. So what's the default?
So this is, that whole chunk of code is taking files from the embedded assets and putting them into a certain folder on the disk. If they're zip, it extracts them and puts the folders in the extracted files in the appropriate place.
So no extraction, basically, just moves them.
It's, well, let me think how to phrase this. So with zip, there's actually two levels of extraction. There's once extracting it from the DLL because it's an embedded asset, and then a second time to actually extract from the zips. Where by default, for everything else, it's just extracting it from the embedded assets in the DLL.
But there is no extraction here, just moving.
I would still call it extraction because it doesn't actually exist in...
Okay. So how would you name this extractor?
Actually, I was going to ask you about that because that's the catch-all for when additional processing isn't needed. So
no extractor. No, it's not default. Default is just no extractor. Does it make sense? Like it doesn't do extracting, it just raw extractor maybe. I don't know.
So you could have like a default object is like a no extraction object which implements the IV source.
No extractor makes sense, right?
Maybe instead of calling the interface iResource extractor, it should be iResource unpacker, because essentially what that block of code is doing, it's unpacking from the DLL, and then that specific implementation on the zip side actually extracts as well as unpacks. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. and this will be called unpack. All right.
Yeah, I like that.
Zip unpacker and no unpacker. So now we don't need a switch.
Right.
Extension. So we say if instead of extractors, we call it unpackers. And we say unpacker so we say if unpackers contains key that is that extension, then we get the unpacker by the extension and unpack. Does it take anything?
It would need to take the resource stream itself. The unpack method, that is. And the file to unpack it to, I believe.
So this.
Yes. Yep.
And the file you said. Okay, so two things. Resource stream, just like that. Or is it just stream?
That is...
File.
Just stream.
Stream. Just stream, okay.
Yeah.
Is there that type? The resource stream? I'd still imagine it derives from stream, so technically that works.
Yeah, so it looks like the manifest, well, it says get manifest resource stream actually just returns a stream. The C# library does.
So we would have public register default, I guess. Void. Though it's optional, I'm not sure if it's needed, if it ever changes, but maybe. So explicitly you would have private read-only default unpacker, I resource unpacker, default unpacker, and here you say that it's this, and I guess by default you still need one, so you can say that it's no unpacker. But you can replace it if you wanted. It awfully looks like a setter, but let's be cool about it. Okay, so else we use the default one. With resource stream and a file.
Yep.
So then in there, this will be set up extractors, I guess.
That would need to go before the actual loading of any of the other files. But yeah.
Yes, that's true.
Essentially, that the extractor part or the unpacker loads things onto the disk, and then the other files or the other methods as needed of those files.
And again, you don't. Well, normally you would inject it, you wouldn't hard code it, but I guess it's fine. I just never figured out how to manage dependency injection in Unity, or if it's even possible. So let's just make it static for shits and giggles. Private static void setup extractor. So let's close some useless stuff. Okay, so we have here, and next to this one you would have, okay, it makes a lot of sense now to have this actually a part of our other thing, so it's more benefits. So it makes sense to have it a part of zip extractor. So that problem is solved.
Yep.
It no longer is static. The other thing will be static. So it's well encapsulated, hidden away, really cool. If we go back, we say resource unpacker, and this can be static. Or read only. It cannot be private static resource unpacker. Resource unpacker. Okay. Okay, and set up unpackers, not extractors. Unpackers. And this will be var resource extractor, resource extractor, and unpacker. Fuck's sake. Is the name still unpacker or extractor?
Should be unpacker.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Unpacker. Great. So we say var zip unpacker pure D for the win. So we say resource unpacker register not public? Come on. Register. Why is it not picking up? Void makes sense. Register unpacker, which is zip, and the other one register default, which is default. So you have your unpackers, and in your load extract assets method, you now just say the best part of this, that you can just say unpack resource stream.
I think that needs to be in the for loop.
I think resource stream itself.
Oh, right, because getting the resource stream in the resource unpacker.
Actually, this is even better. It could be an. Oh no, never mind. This needs to be extracted. Yeah. Can we make it smarter? Do we really need both? Can't we just give it the file?
Let me take a look.
I think we can just give it the file. Or at least have both, you know? Yeah, we can do that. So let's do it. Have a file and have two basically implementations. So one for file and another one for file, just file, and the other one for both.
I think file actually by itself actually might work here, because the resource stream, no, you need the assembly then.
Let's have both. So you have file. When you have file, you create resource stream, and out of this you can then carry on and work with it. So we can then pass this for code reuse. I'm not even sure. Yeah, we do need the using. Okay, so file and resource stream like this. So we basically just need to. Oh, this is a perfect case for default interface implementation. If it was C#8, you would have this as default.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Okay, anyways, so we put this. It's literally just copy paste.
Could be an abstract class instead of a interface, since it's going to need that method on all of the.
Why must you make me go that road? I agree, but I will not do it nevertheless. I agree, but for now it's okay. But I agree that it probably is better for abstract class.
I'll make note of that on my notes.
Due to the need of unpack with same implementation all across. So now the whole point, of course this would go to other file. Let's actually move it to other file. Or rather a folder. Resource.
What's going on here?
Hello, we are refactoring code. It's a stream you can watch if you want. We're refactoring doing a code review for a framework for a Planetbase game. So basically a framework which allows modding of a game. I guess I'll just call it resources. Maybe a better name is appropriate. let's have everything here. Will ReSharper be my friend? Okay, so I'm not using ReSharper, I realize, because it's Visual Studio 2019. Okay, whatever. Anyways, each would be its own file. You get the point.
Yep, I got it.
So resource unpackers, just call it.
That's a big bug in the server.
What do you mean?
There's a permission error. I forget what role, what allows people with the role to do things that they shouldn't be able to do.
Let's talk after stream, okay? I'll look into it. Or DM me what is the problem. Thanks for heads up. Yeah, that's me. Okay.
Oh no, because he has a roll above it. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for noting. Please let me know more details about it. Okay, let's continue. So I think this is done for the mod base. It's quite nice now. Framework mod, this looks fine. Not much code. The only thing that sticked out to me is this, but let's see if it makes sense. Mod tile button. Tile button. I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, that one is specific to this one mod. I didn't really want it instantiated outside of or instantiated or extended outside of this class.
I justify it, all good. Base modulo type. The only nitpick I would have, this is fine, but this load prefab size index.
So, this is where actually a lot of work and a lot of the magic of loading new game objects comes in. So the base game has a type called, or a class called module type, and basically a module type is the parent class for a majority of the game objects in the game, majority of anything that shows up in the 3D world space in the game. In the way it actually loads 3D models, or the way it handles passing 3D models to down the pipeline to the rest of the game is via that load prefab. So that method signature there and the actual functionality of it is more determined by what the base game requires than how I'd write it.
All right. What I do like in this piece of code is that you put lots of comments, which definitely clarifies all the magic. So that's good. Could you split it more, I wonder? Well, each of those comments that you wrote,
I'd probably split those out into private methods and call them.
maybe. It's not horrible, really. It's a consideration. For this one, it's quite convenient, I think. Like you would call it add collider for raycasting. Boom, method. The rest, I don't see it like as its own one method. So extracting this wouldn't probably make sense, but extracting this I think makes sense. All right. Next. We check this. Game state. Mod list game state.
Let's see. Yeah, so
Also don't know why you don't do this, but maybe because C# language, is it supported?
yes, it specifically has to be that because it's over. So if you use the arrow notation that's a property, it does not have the same name. It's not the same as overriding the way it's written there.
I don't follow.
So when you do the equals arrow
Mm-hmm.
operator, that's actually a get property, which has a different method signature than a normal property.
But this is a method. It's not a property.
Right, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, I get what you meant. Yeah, that's not the thing that I meant. I think this. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think though. Here, let me try it on. I've got the code pulled up. Let me try here just to make sure it actually compiles. Yeah, looks like that's just fine here.
Okay, I would so prefer works. For those short, very this syntax. Yeah.
Easier to read.
Yeah. This should definitely be a method. Though when should you start the method? This is fine, but this should go as a method. So basically it reads if I pressed space, I don't do anything. But if space is not pressed, I do this. So it does make sense then. So what is this? This is too much detail for me. I just want to look at onGUI and understand what it does. But now I need to read 20 lines of code to understand what it does. I just want to have a look at it and immediately know what it does. Now I cannot. Though you basically explained it here, it loads mods. So this is literally load mods. Probably, unless this is lying.
that lists. That's a UI thing that lists the mods that have been loaded. It doesn't do any action of loading mods. It just shows what have been loaded, what the game found.
Okay, so maybe this is fine and this is a separate, like to be on the same level. You know, this is high level. I want this to be high level as well.
Okay.
So one step function, you can do the job. It's details. This is fine. Though, isn't this very similar to this one? Oh, it's inheritance. Okay, all good. Let's continue. Let's have at most half an hour more because I don't want this to be too long. So mod loader, load mods. Immediately what sticks to me, all static methods, thus a class itself should be static. But probably, well, normally if it was MVC, ASP.NET, you would have it non-static and inject it as singleton instead. So let the container manage what you want global and not, which is more better for testability as, yeah. But let's keep to it. A list of all mods that have been initialized. I wonder, would it ever be something not like this? So this comment to me looks a bit obvious, but maybe it's fine. I guess from this code I can already say that like it matches what I see in code.
Okay.
Like this is a list, well, of all mods, that's what I would presume, that have been initialized.
that might be the important part there. That is specifically ones that have been initialized, because that can be, it is quote unquote legal to access that list during initialization of a mod.
Okay.
So it might be important to note that those are specifically initialized mods, and that there may be more mods at some point in the future. There may be more mods that exist. They're just not initialized.
Right. So boom, named what it is. No comment needed. It's a list, of course, so list is redundant. So yeah, initialize mods. Mods, mod DLLs, right? So you basically load those from assemblies. So you load the assembly files. So this is basically loading assembly files, this bit. So split the function, load assembly files. Then what is this doing? Assembly load file, get types. This is very complex to understand. First off, I would say this can be at least two functions in its own. This would obviously go as a function, but it can be further divided into two functions. So I'm thinking, skip if the type is in a mod. Fuck. This is bad, quite bad. It's slow, this thing, activator.
Right, but the thing is, in this specific instance, I'm not concerned about whether or not it's slow, because this will only ever be ran one time the program's execution.
Okay,
So
fair enough.
It's running this every.
Just to drop a better alternative, slightly more complex, have you considered compiled lambda expression instead?
I'm sorry, what?
Compiled lambda expression.
No, I haven't. Could you show me an example?
Yes.
I haven't heard of that before.
Basically, this would be the method instead, a better alternative, and you basically precompile an expression which works like as a constructor, but it would be based on non-static, some non-reflection based code, but an expression tree instead. So you have an expression for initializing object and you compile it, but probably for one-time use it's the same, but if you use it multiple times it's faster.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be reflection based, it would be expression based, which makes it faster. Okay, and actually it's 10 or I think it's 10 times faster, if I remember the benchmarks right.
Substantially.
Yes.
I might do that. I've been having a couple issues with some longer load times. I mean, even if it's 1 to 2 seconds, that's 1 to 2 seconds before the application can show anything whatsoever. So that might be useful there, real useful.
Yeah, I left the link in for Stack Overflow post in the chat.
Thanks, I'll read through it.
Yeah, just the general page for expression trees and MSDN, I recommend reading that. Just how you can basically have code, like how you can compose code literals into expression trees through expression trees and then compile them into code that you execute. So that's how basically you can parse code and evaluate it on the fly.
Great.
By yourself.
Actually solves a problem in one of my other projects I've been working on.
Yeah.
So I will keep that in mind.
Okay. So what does this do? It again loads files. So types now. It loads types. Okay, so load types basically is the function.
Right.
Next. So now that you have types, you probably in why do you need types?
So those are the types in the loaded files. So I take a assembly that the
Inject
game loaded.
mods, does it make sense?
Let me take a look. Let me read through this here. Yeah, I'd say that makes sense.
Okay. So I guess this for each loop can be left, but I would just split those two in their own functions.
Sure.
And then that makes sense. Okay, update mods. The rest makes sense. Let's move on. Yeah, it makes sense. I like the use of attribute. Actually, I don't know what it's for. Mod load ignored attribute. Why does this ignore mod loading?
So if there's what the mod loader class does is it looks for classes that extend mod base. That's how it determines that a type is a
Yeah.
mod. And if you put that ignore attribute on an implementation of that mod base class, then it is not loaded.
Yeah, I see.
And there are some specific and good uses for that where you're dynamically creating mod types.
I think it's fine, though. I think it's fine. Yeah. Normally, the logic for reflection would be an attribute itself, and you wouldn't rely the outside like user to rely on it, but I might be wrong. I'm not sure how the common implementations for attributes look like, though I'm more used to that the logic would be in it. I would again use XML docs here and add a cref to mod loader that it uses it as a way to ignore mods.
Yeah, absolutely.
Object loader.
So this one, I did not write probably 80% of that. That's largely from. I have it something listed there on who it's from and where it's from and all that.
What the fuck is this?
Yeah, I did. Like I said, I didn't write most of that. That is a tool that somebody wrote to actually load meshes from OBJ files, which is unfortunately really, really complex.
I'll skip. Did you write this?
No, I didn't write.
I'll skip then this file.
Okay.
And the strings, which are kind of translations, kind of not. Okay. Utils. Okay, I see. So this is literally everything that basically are common stuff. So instead I would just call this common. And instead of utils, I would split this into many smaller classes, I would say. So load strings from file is one thing. Load PNGs from file is another. And those two are their own responsibility. So region split to, I don't know, file something, file loaders. Resource loaders for, yeah, I don't know, you'll come up with better name.
Yeah, that's kind of why I hadn't split them out already. I'm just unsure on where they should really live.
Yeah. Next. Normal map. Object by name, by file path. Okay. Oh shit,
And
how the
those
list
are
goes on.
game extension stuff for some Unity.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'd agree with you that
It's too big. It does, like,
right.
If you look for stuff, you would always have to, you know, read through the whole file to look for something, but instead you could have a common folder with resource loaders. I'm not sure where to split that one, but this is definitely object finder, something like this, and this looks like yeah. Well, this definitely goes here, and reach an object finder. Then I don't know where this would go. I don't know where this would go.
I think the object finder and the is valid tag that actually might.
Okay, let's stick it under.
Might be appropriate to stick in a game object helper class, something along those lines.
Those two. Okay.
So they're all related to game objects.
Extensions, let's call it, though it's not really extensions, but so be it. List embedded files. This would probably go to... No, it wouldn't go. It's not related to resources, is it?
A little bit. So you might see why I've been struggling to figure out where to stick this stuff. The list embedded files that list the assets that are inside the DLL, which is primarily used for loading. So maybe that would fit under the resource loaders.
Okay, but to get the point, you basically need to split this and remove the utils class altogether and have a common folder with your shared, a bunch of shared classes per responsibility, and not just have abstract utils name, instead be specific. So that would be it. And now your question about testability, as how do you do that in Unity? Well, the key part would be having a segregation between what you can do without Unity and what you cannot. And I think everything here works without Unity. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, nothing relies on the engine itself. Like, if I, let's say, were to do a simulation, I could create each of those and run and test it if I want to without Unity itself.
So, if I remember correctly, granted, it's been a while since I've looked at this, and I may be incorrect here, but if I remember correctly, last time I was working on some testing stuff, when I actually went to run a test framework and it loads the library that's testing, as well as the other resources, the other DLLs like the Unity DLL that are required by the library, something in the Unity DLL would throw an exception because it's not running under the Unity engine.
Mm-hmm.
which makes it really, really difficult to test because that means I would have to somehow.
I think. Have you heard of a term called shim? Do you know what shim is?
No, I'm not familiar.
I haven't worked with them, but I think this is your case, shim .net. So basically, shim is a fake assembly. So you can use a fake assembly instead of actual assembly and refer to that when testing. So you could, I think you could swap Unity with a shim, Unity engine with a shim. Again, I haven't used it myself, but maybe this will put you to the right direction.
Yeah, that'd be great. That sounds like exactly what I need.
So
normally, go ahead.
So reading description, shim types are one of the two technologies that Microsoft fakes framework uses to let you isolate components under test from the environment. Shims divert calls to specific methods to code that you write as part of your test. Use shims to isolate your code from assemblies that are not part of your solution. To isolate components of your solution from each other, use stubs.
Great.
So I think that's the answer to how you test your mod game. Unit test.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I'd never heard of this before.
Yeah, I learned about it not that long time ago as well. I think that's it.
Oh, great.
Well, we have this, that, not dirty, nothing there. Yeah, I think we're done. Well,
Okay.
I hope that
It's
was
been really
useful.
helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
great. So yeah, if you do test your code and if you succeed, please let me know. I'm interested in that myself, if it will make it testable. And yeah, I hope it will make it cleaner, better, more solid, and it met your expectations.
Well, absolutely. I really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to work on this with me. It's been really informative.
No problem. So that is it, and see you next time. I'll end the stream now.